My name is Joe Smith, and I'm 63 years old, and starting about 35 years ago, I helped develop the first hospital-based wellness center in the country, and also attached to that was a sports medicine center. So over the last 30 to 35 years, both professionally, I've been involved with the development of sports medicine, hospital-based wellness centers, as well as medical rehabilitation hospitals, ambulatory care centers, ambulatory surgery centers, a lot of things dealing with the medical establishment. Personally, I've been interested in fitness really ever since 1965. I've competed in ultramarathons, marathons, 5K races, 10K races, and triathlons. And in the last 3 or 4 years, I've become very interested in road biking as a result of my son's involvement in road biking. My background was actually in exercise physiology. So early on, back in the late 60s and early 70s, for instance, I knew Robert Cade, who was an inventor of Gatorade, and back during that period of time at the University of Florida, we had a testing lab, so we were doing treadmill tests with people like Jack Batchelor, Frank Shorter, a lot of the elite marathoners for that particular period. So I've had really pretty much a lifelong interest in exercise physiology and anatomy and things of that nature. I was a clinician for 5 years, a cardiopulmonary technologist, so I have a pretty in-depth background in terms of the cardiopulmonary system, the heart and the lungs and how it works, and really how the body works. So my interest in physiology and exercise really spans probably 4 decades now. So I think it puts me in a pretty good position both in terms of my own experience as well as my academic background and my professional experience to be able to speak in a way about Marc Pro that has some validity to it. Well, I've been using the Marc Pro for about a year now. And when I began using it, I anticipated that I'd probably feel better as a result of using it, because when you actually have it connected to the various areas of your body, particularly in the case of being a cyclist, which would be the hips and the leg muscles, that just the action in and of itself actually feels good while you're pumping with it. What I didn't anticipate that it would have such a profound effect on my performance. And what I've noticed, and I happen to live in an area of the country where it's mountainous, I live at about 6,500 feet, that I spend a lot of time climbing up and down slopes that have elevation gains of between 2,000 and 3,000 feet. What I noticed from the 2 years prior to using Marc Pro, that my recovery period in terms of being able to actually scale those mountains at a certain time was altered dramatically after I started using the Marc Pro. I could actually get up to the tops of these summits quicker and in less pain, and I recovered faster. The Marc Pro is exceptionally easy to use. It's very practical. It's very intuitive in terms of where you actually attach the electrodes, and it's very easy to decide how much intensity you want in terms of the actual pumping action. Marc Pro is very comfortable. In fact, after exercising with extreme exertion, you feel far more comfortable with the Marc Pro's action than you do if you're not using it. Well, you know, being recreationally very active, I pay a lot of attention to my nutrition, to supplements, to the use of ice, which is of course very popular, to different ointments that you can actually put on affected areas that you can feel. And there really is no comparison in terms of results, both while you're using the Marc Pro and afterwards. To put it into perspective, you can understand, if you've been biking for 2 or 3 hours, whether it's on the flats or the mountains, and you've been probably operating at an 80% exertion rate, typically when you're done, your legs are tired, and not long after, they feel very heavy. I've used ice before. I've used the ointments that you could actually just spray on your legs, and of course now using Marc Pro. There really is no comparison. When you're done using the Marc Pro, you actually have a subjective feeling. Your legs actually feel lighter. When you start moving around, you don't feel nearly as much fatigue or any type of soreness. I really can't make the same type of claim in terms of ice or ointments. I think it helps make you feel more comfortable really for anything that has to do with certainly ambulation, but actually rest as well. The fact is, when you use the machine, particularly I found for at least an hour, and I'll sometimes do it immediately after exercise. Sometimes I'll actually do it before I go to bed if I'm just watching TV or reading. And if in fact soreness and discomfort and fatigue is interrupting your sleep pattern and you use this, you're not going to not go to sleep because your legs still have that soreness and fatigue or discomfort. It eliminates those feelings. And I do in fact use the Marc Pro on off days. And the reason for that is, one is I know that in addition to really helping me recover, it's actually also helping me condition. And the more I condition with it, the better I recover. So both those two things go hand in hand. It's also so convenient and practical to use. You really can't find any excuse as to why you wouldn't use it. Now, I'm a businessman, so I still have to go to meetings and things of that nature, so obviously I'm not going to go into a business meeting with a Marc Pro on. But when I'm at home, whether I happen to be reading at the computer or watching TV, and sometimes before I go to sleep, actually laying in the bed, I'll hook up the Marc Pro and actually use that. Once again, it's comfortable, it's very intuitive in terms of its use, and so I use it frequently for that. As relates to people that aren't necessarily highly competitive or elite athletes, or maybe even the person that's a very serious recreational exerciser, which is how I classify myself, is that they probably would get even more benefit. Number one, so many people that in fact haven't necessarily exercised for a lifetime, aren't necessarily in the condition they'd like to be. Even initiating exercise and something as simple as a walking program is often too painful for them. It causes fatigue and discomfort, and as a result of that, they're not likely to continue doing it. Using the Marc Pro will absolutely allow them to be able to condition themselves, which will enhance their experience, whether it happens to be just walking or playing some very casual recreational sport. Could be softball, badminton, whatever it happens to be. So I actually think for the probably the non-athletic group, Marc Pro probably would have a more positive effect even than what you can tell if you're in better condition.